and our players across the league are too often the targets. This is not something any player in this league should have to tolerate.
Do you think Caitlin's being used as a pawn? Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this.
We've been saying it from the start. This is where everything kicked off. Stick around till the end to see why the Indiana Fever are shaking things up in a big way. The team has already made some bold moves, and one twist involving Caitlin Clark caught everyone off guard. At the same time, Starbird didn't hold back, openly calling out racism in the NBA. This moment has been a long time coming. Gold medalists, MVPs, and legends before her have all fought through the same battles. But then, one voice finally decided to rise above the silence. Sue didn't just speak to be heard, she dropped fireworks. And before anyone else could even react, the Indiana Fever camp already had something to say. Knowing full well it could cost her career, she still went all in during a raw, unfiltered podcast with Megan Rapinoe. She raised the hard question. Why is Caitlin Clark being singled out by racists when she's breaking records and driving sales through the roof? She even went as far as suggesting that the league itself might be plotting against her right now. Turn up the volume, Christine. A reporter tossed Des Carrington what looked like a routine post-game question, but it turned out to be anything but. Normally, athletes deal with tough press moments all the time, but this one spiraled fast. Rapinoe pushed back, saying the question, though it sounded harmless, carried a racist undertone and exposed a side of the issue people rarely talk about. My gut reaction? Instant discomfort. It felt wrong. It felt racist. Plain and simple. Sue, on the other hand, fired back at the media, especially ESPN, accusing them of fanning the flames. She argued it wasn't just the question itself, but the way the media twisted it that made it toxic. Sue reminded everyone that athletes of color always face harsher judgment than their white peers. And if a black athlete had been in the same spot, suddenly the whole thing explodes into a race war. Sue insisted this was just one piece of a bigger picture. Even while still trying to stay composed, Christine called out the WNBA and the media for letting dangerous rumors run wild. She made it clear she didn't want things to spiral out of control, but Sue pointed out the truth. If the same thing had happened to a white athlete, it probably wouldn't have blown up like this. Had Carrington been white, the narrative would have twisted in far more complicated ways, carrying consequences that reached much further. It all kicked off with a bold statement from none other than Diana Taurasi. The legend herself lit a spark that set the entire WNBA world on fire. Chaos followed. Then Sue Bird, usually the calm, steady voice of reason, stepped in to unpack what those words really meant. But this time, the fallout hit harder than anyone expected. When Sue said things got ugly, she wasn't talking about normal on-court trash talk. She meant the game itself was being drowned out by hate speech. Suddenly, basketball wasn't the focus anymore. Fans were fuming, not just over plays and scores, but over deeper battles about racism and privilege. Sue made it crystal clear. Caitlin wasn't just dodging elbows and trash talk. Not even close. She was bracing for real hits, not just symbolic ones. Every time she stepped onto the floor, it felt like she had to armor up for more than basketball strategy. Players were targeting her, and it crossed the line from competition into something darker. Sue stressed this wasn't just tough defense. Caitlin was dealing with challenges that went far beyond the game itself, personal, uncomfortable, and deeply raw. And Sue didn't shy away from naming it. Race played a part. Caitlin's rise wasn't only questioned because of her spotlight. It was twisted into a conversation about racism, privilege, and what it means for athletes of color. Sue held nothing back. This wasn't just about sports anymore. Caitlin was tangled up in the league's very real and very ugly fight with racism. She didn't hold back when it came to calling out Caitlin Clark and her fans, flat out accusing them of racism and hinting that Caitlin was getting the so-called white girl pass. She spoke openly about Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas, almost like she'd been waiting to unload this truth for years. Reese has never been shy, proudly carrying her voice and presence since her LSU days. Thomas has been a powerhouse for the Connecticut Sun, proving her worth season after season. Yet some critics argue that Caitlin's spotlight isn't about talent at all, that she represents white privilege in the WNBA, benefiting more from her skin color than her actual game. But then came Sue. She flat out rejected the twisted narrative and demanded it be taken back. She didn't sugarcoat a thing, calling Reese and Thomas's behavior not just wrong, but destructive and flat out immoral. Sue acknowledges that racism exists in the WNBA, but she made it clear. The accusations aimed at Caitlin are baseless. Caitlin sees Reese and Thomas as using the racial angle to cover up their own frustrations and to bring her down instead of owning their actions. This isn't some earth-shattering expose on racism in sports. It's more of a convenient excuse. And spoiler alert, Sue isn't buying it. She didn't hold back, calling it out bluntly and without hesitation. This isn't something new. It's been happening long before this year. Sue believes Caitlin is being used as a pawn in all the chaos. Make no mistake, Caitlin didn't bring racism into the WNBA. It's always been there. The revelations have shocked everyone, leaving fans and players alike stunned. Sue has been trying to set the record straight. She debated fiercely, saying yes, Caitlin is in the spotlight, but not because of her skin, rather because she's an incredible athlete. According to Sue, the whole situation has been twisted into a false story. She refused to let Reese and Thomas misrepresent the facts, even with Caitlin front and center. And on the court, Sue's dominance is undeniable. Her rise has been meteoric. Sue revealed something surprising. She's personally spoken with Caitlin Clark and gotten to know her firsthand. So what about the whole white privilege story that Reese and Thomas keep pushing? Sue made it crystal clear. Caitlin isn't some athlete coasting on her race. She's worked relentlessly, climbing her way up just like anyone else. Bird understands the layers of this issue, and she doesn't shy away from speaking that truth out loud. But then things took a darker turn. Sue pointed out that the race narrative has been twisted into a reason for players to target Caitlin physically on the court. Accusations of racism are being weaponized against her, and the problem has spilled far beyond basketball. Bird made it clear, the game isn't just about competition anymore. Players are singling Caitlin out, motivated by envy, grudges, or perceived racial issues. She's forced to dodge both verbal attacks and physical blows, and it's starting to feel way too personal. Sue doesn't hold back. She calls out the way the race debate has been weaponized and says it's harming everyone involved. Players like Reese and Thomas are making the league's racial tensions worse, using the spotlight to air personal grievances instead of tackling the real issues. Bird isn't saying we shouldn't talk about race. She's saying this isn't the right way to do it. Caitlin's situation is driving wedges in society instead of fostering understanding. The big question now, how will the Indiana Fever respond to all of this? So, what's next? The Indiana Fever are gearing up for major changes, even if they haven't spelled out all the details yet. The arrival of Amber Cox adds a new layer of tension, shaking up the whole environment. The team has brought in a new general manager, while keeping Kelly Krakoff as president of basketball and business operations. The front office has big plans for roster changes this winter. Players will leave, new faces will arrive, and Caitlin Clark could see both close allies and people she wants out, including head coach Christie Sides, exit the team. Sides is expected to be let go this winter, marking a major shakeup. These moves could completely redefine the Fever and set the course for their future. So what do you think? Will the organization transform before the 2025 season kicks off? With a restructured squad led by Caitlin Clark, they're primed to fight for a top 4 finish.